Hello, my name is Olga Tamanova. Welcome everyone who joined Media Center Ukraine Forum. It's been the 10th year of war and it's the 154th day since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and we're going to talk about Russian crimes that they've been committing on the deoccupied areas. We will be talking about the village of Bilyaivka, Kherson region, where Russians illegally detained and tortured Ukrainians in a local school. They made a torture chamber where they held dozens of our citizens for 5 months, and Yelyzaveta Sokurenko will talk about that. The coordinator of the War Crimes Documentation Unit at ZMINA Human Rights Center. Hello everyone. As we mentioned in our report, we focused on the crimes committed by Russians against civilian men in the village of Bilyaivka, Kherson Oblast. The chamber where they held them was located in one of the local schools on the second floor. I think around 20 men were held there from April to September 2022. People from local villages. We did an analysis based on an interview with 12 victims and 5 witnesses and family members during our field visits that we are doing as part of the documentation of war crimes effort. 3 people refrained from providing an interview for us, and also 4 more men that were held in that chamber. They are unfortunately dead. 2 of them died as a result of the torture. 2 of them died afterwards. 1 of them committed suicide, and the other man died from natural causes. In both cases, we can say it may be a result of the torture. And we've collected the evidence, and we can say that all of that was illegal, against any legal procedure. In most of the cases, such detentions were accompanied by physical violence and threats towards victims. According to the people's witnesses evidence, representatives of Russian Federation claimed that these men were correcting fire, Ukrainian fire, but these allegations mostly were random. One of the victims was detained near his house. They found a message on his phone that sounded suspicious for the Russians. It was a message to his friend from the village of Vorontsovka, and the friend wrote that we are being shelled, and there's a Grad vehicle crossing our villages. And the other man didn't have any suspicious messages. Another person that was detained when he brought humanitarian goods when he was returning from the village of Vorontsovka. That's an administrative center of Vorontsovka community that was part of the grain zone. They said that, the Russians said that after he crosses the checkpoint, they are shelled every time. Speaking about the conditions in Bilyaivka, well, they are related to cruel treatment, and considering psychological violence, it can be called torture. The room was a technical premises in school, and that was just a technical room, small chamber, 6 by 3 meters, with no windows, lights, no restroom. It was cold, and victims even tore off the wallpaper to fill in the gaps in the holes. and they didn't have any fresh air. Only when the door was opened for a short period of time by Russians. There were 3-level beds, and some of these people had to sleep on the floor on a cardboard. For the whole period of time, 8 to 13 people were held in the room at the same time, and the victims didn't know where they were, because when they were detained, they limited their eyesight. They put bags or hats on top of their heads, and they only learned about where they are only after the local citizen was brought into the room. They just brought them some brew in a 5-liter plastic bottle. Sometimes they gave them some canned meat and sometimes bread. The situation where the drinkable water was critical. They gave them water once every couple of days. They gave them 5 liters for everyone. Victims mentioned limitations like limiting access to water, torturing by water deprivation. Some men had to drink their own urine. Russian militaries limited their access to water and food as a means of imposing suffering. And the people who guarded them from so-called DNR and LNR Republic, they discussed urinating and defecating in their food. The room wasn't good to help people there. There was no water supply, and men had to urinate in the plastic bottles and then pour it out into the water drain. There was no privacy at all. People that were in the room didn't have any possibility to shower. They didn't brought them outside. Only before they were liberated, Russian soldiers once brought them some chlorine solutions and some clothes, but they were so dirty, so they couldn't wash themselves properly. They used mental torture during interrogation. They wanted to get information about Ukrainian military, Ukrainian territorial defense, about people who help Ukrainian military, so they have family members as Ukrainian militaries. They wanted to find locations of Ukrainian checkpoints and Ukrainian weapons and vehicles. During the interrogation, Russian militaries used their personal ties with the victims in order to impose more suffering, because part of these men were neighbors or friends. Sometimes they had 2 brothers, almost all of them are farmers, and their villages are located close together and they knew each other. Once 2 friends were interrogated, and the Russian militaries suggested that they choose the knee that they were going to be shot at. During the interrogation, one of the brothers, they were ordered to undress themselves, and they were told that they will be their muscles will be cut. Also, they made fake shots near their heads, and one of them was told that his friend is dead, and if he doesn't want to be killed, then he needs to provide all the information that they requested. Besides, Russian militaries used the situation where they deprived the victims of food. They used that to make them suffer. They suggested exchange food for information. And they said that if they provide information, they will be provided food. And they said multiple times, if we get information, you will get food or water. Some of them were physically tortured. The most popular type of torture was so-called professional beating. In some of the instances, Russian militaries used people's health conditions to make them suffer. Some of the victims said that he has a kidney problem, and the Russian military started beating him, hitting his kidneys. Most of the people held there, they mentioned a Russian military codename Shaman, as he was responsible for the interrogations and torture. Another victim said that his back is broken, and the Russian military asked him where exactly. After that, he hit him with a knee into that specific place. Besides, they used electrical current to make victims suffer. Also, they used sexualized torture. They connected the wires to genitals. Sexualized torture is recorded in 2 instances. One of the victims, after he was brought to the school, in the hallway, his genitals and fingers were crushed with pliers. More victims said that they were threatened to be castrated. Also, they gave them couple of some shots of unknown medications. Victims also mentioned that they witnessed death of 2 men, from Oleg Kovalek from the village of Gorolyubivka and Dmitro Zhuravlyov that lived in the village of Bilyaivka. Oleg Kovalek was brought to Bilyaivka torture chamber, and some of the witnesses mentioned that they've been hearing him scream for a few hours. Obviously, they used torture against him, and when, as I said, he was thrown into the room, he was beaten. His hands were tied with scotch tape, hands behind his back. The man asked the Russians to untie him, but the Russians didn't do that. They prevented people from doing that, and they threatened him. One of the victims knew Oleg personally, and he could remove the hat from his head to make him see. And Oleg said that his nose is burning, which may be a result of torture. They used fire extinguisher. Also, his pants were cut in the genital area, so obviously he was tortured. His genitals were tortured. They brought him to the chamber, and after 30 to 40 minutes he died, and his body was there for a day. They said that another victim, another person was responsible for his death. After Oleg Kovalyk's death, Russian military came in and closed the door, and with a threatening voice, he said that they will be killed because they were witness to a murder. And the Russian military officer, he made him confirm that another victim killed Oleg. Other victims saw Oleg's condition. He claimed that he received different medication shots, and Russian officers said, if you don't want to receive a shot, behave properly. The victims described Dmitro Zhuravlyov's conditions as he had a sleep deprivation, he was moving all the time, his conscience was bedazzled, he urinated, randomly urinated, and they made him sit, helped him up, but he kept falling. And Dmitro Zhuravlyov kept asking for water, and they almost had none of it. The man knocked on the door, and once Russian officers opened the door, and they poured 1.5 liters of water onto his head. So they had a wooden hammer, and they hit him on the head. And one of the victims said that it felt like he had another had grown up. Another victim said that he was brought to a different room for 3 to 5 days, and he wasn't in Bilyaivka chamber. Then he was brought back, and then he repeatedly said that he received a medication shot, and his condition repeated. Dmitro Zhuravlyov died in May, and as other victims describe it, he was so skinny that you could see his spine through his belly. Russian military officers brought the bodies in unknown direction. Both are missing, and there is no information about their locations. And Russian officers must understand that tortures and deprivation of medical assistance can lead to death. They were aware of that, so it can be called a murder, manslaughter. 2 victims spent 10 days in the chamber, and after that they were brought to a different location in Novoberezslav and Nova Kakhovka. And it happened without any previous notice. These men were relocated multiple times. They were filmed as part of a propaganda video. They made him read a text from a piece of paper. The text was always almost the same every time, and it said that I hate Zelensky's government and I will cooperate with the Russian military. And they were threatened while they were reading, and they said, if you read the text, you're free. If not, you're going back to the pit. Also, they made them say that they were treated properly, they received enough food and medical care, and 2 victims said that they were forced to say that they corrected Ukrainian fire on camera. So using that, Russian officers wanted to avoid responsibility for the death, for tortures, and it means that Russian officers committed these crimes being aware of their responsibility for them. That torture affected victims' mental health. They lost weight, 13 to 36 kilograms. The victims claim that their eyesight decreased because of lack of daylight, and their conditions worsened. Right now, we're working to document these crimes. An SBU, local SBU office, is responsible for that. We couldn't receive any information from them, but we will send whatever information we have to them. Besides, in our report, we have some recommendations for law enforcement and governmental agencies and international partners to ensure Oleg Kovalek's and Dmitro Zhuralyov's bodies are recovered. And also we need to hold Russia responsible. This is not our first analysis on torture instances. And we can say that Russians use same torture methods to different people on the occupied Ukrainian areas. And what happened to men in Bilyaivka are not just potential war crimes, but in wider context, they can be used to prove that Russia commits crimes against humanity, like torture. You can read the full version of our report on the ZMINA UA website, and thank you very much for your attention. Yelizaveta, do I understand correctly, both bodies were not recovered and found? Yes, they never been found. Family members came up with different initiatives. They're trying to find them. This information was not confirmed, but the body of Oleg Kovalek can be located in one of the forests. And Oleg's wife was there, and together with bomb technicians, she tried to find the body. Do you know how many people went through this particular torture chamber? In this village, we identified 20 people. We contacted almost every one of them. 3 refrained from any cooperation, and we couldn't find contacts of one person, and we couldn't reach him. Colleagues, do you have questions? Hello, Ukrinform, Valentina Rengel. Tell us, please, these horrible witness evidence, will it be provided to international organizations? Thank you for that question. We will be sending a report to International Criminal Court. Also, we will be meeting UN representatives on torture, and we will share our reports, including this one. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation of such atrocities that are even hard to talk about. We had Yelyzaveta Sokurenko, coordinator of war crimes documentation within ZMINA initiative. We hope that all Russians that are responsible for that will be persecuted, and the next briefing will start at 2 p.m. Stay with us, working for our victory, and glory to Ukraine.